Hi everyone, this is my second half of my Professor Guide. Today I'll be talking about the programs that you will include in your Professor deck of all different colors, red, blue and green. But first I'd like to start off by giving a shout out to this card database website, Onosendaicorp.com. If you haven't heard of it before, you must check it out. I'll link it in the description below. It's a fantastic website for getting to know the cards better because they're all available in high res and they are very easily searchable with lots of you can configure all the searching parameters you want, and yeah, it's the most appealing to people who take in information visually like me, and it has helped me tremendously in the building of this Professor deck. So without further ado, let's get on to the guide. First, of course, we'll start off with icebreakers. So here is a list of the more common icebreakers in the game. On the left, you see there's a whole range from the cheap to the expensive. Generally, the cheap icebreakers are very efficient. However, they have severe limitations. Cyber Cipher, for example, only attacks a single server, and Fairy only attacks a single piece of ice, after which it will be destroyed. Quite nice to have because when you are low on credits and you are forced to make a run, to ensure that the corp doesn't win or at least score an agenda, having these one-shots will allow you to get into the server when you're low on credits. INT is a different story. INT is a permanent breaker. It's a low-end breaker in the sense that it is cheap to play. However, it costs way too much to pump for any strength above 1. So it's sheer inefficiency, or rather being overshadowed by the sheer efficiency of its neighbor, Corroder. For an install cost of 2 less, it will only deal with barriers that are of strength 0 or strength 1 efficiently. So this very niche use does not justify a space in my deck, hence it has got to go. Then we have the very common Anarch Breaker suite, which I have one of for each icebreaker. No questions there. Being able to break through code gates for 0 cost is fantastic. Being able to break through Jinteki with a single Mimic that only costs 3 to play is also huge. And Corroder is the most flexible factor in the game, so you have to have it. As for the high-end breakers, Morningstar, Torch and Garrot, well, you include them because you're a professor. You want to have these programs so that you can break through all the big nasty ice efficiently. Ninja deserves a special shout out. I've already done a commentary on it, and turns out that Ninja is almost as efficient as Garrot and costs much less memory and install cost to get on the board. So it's a reason why I'm including it in my deck as well. Even though both Ninja and Garrot break through most ice for roughly the same credit cost, but sometimes you just need the memory space, and Ninja does it better in those cases. Moving on to some other icebreakers. Femme Fatale is not exactly the most ideal sentry breaker, but will do in a pinch, and more importantly, you use it for the ability to bypass a single piece of ice. So that very trait alone warrants a spot in my deck. As for Gordian Blade is out for me, simply because whatever Gordian Blade wants to achieve, Cyber Cipher plus York can do it better. Cyber Cipher costs less to bring out than a Gordian Blade and has 2 more strength. And if you want to consistently break ice, there's York if the enemy is not running any code gates of strength higher than 3. Or there's Torch, which you can cheat out with Test Run and Scavenge. So there's no need for Gordian Blade. Alright, so this is basically my entire icebreaker suite. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 programs dedicated to ice breaking. And these programs actually break almost every single piece of ice in the game. You think about it, most ice can be dealt with pretty easily with any of these breakers. So mission accomplished as the professor. Because of this, you do not need things such as AI breakers at all. At first, I had a single copy of Artman inside, but then I realized I was never tutoring it because there was always a better solution than spending lots of money to pump an Artman, which is only situationally useful. Same goes with the rest of the AI breakers. They have their own limitations. I also did not use Deep Thought and Shakana, which are not really breakers, but they leverage off successful runs. The problem is that as the professor, you're not always running, and memory is short, so you don't really want to spend tutors to tutor Deep Thought or Shakana. And even when you do tutor them, whether they will be very effective is questionable at best. I also do not use any strength lowerers, the likes of Data Sucker and Bishop, simply because my breaker suite, the 10 icebreakers that I use, all serve to make icebreaking efficient enough, and their strength can be pumped anyway. So there's absolutely no need to use the inefficient Bishop, which needs to hop around the game board, or the Data Sucker, which requires runs and can be purged, virus purged. Finally, I do not use any form of credit denial, the likes of Ice Destruction with Parasite, or Chrysanthus to de-res, False Echo to de-res, or Rook to increase res cost. Professor is not about denying credits, and my deck concedes that. Because, yes, I don't have anything like Account Siphon or VAM to keep the runner, to keep the corp poor, so there's no need to go into this department here. Next, we'll talk about digging. Being able to access multiple cards each run is very important as the professor, because sooner or later the corp will ice up both centrals sufficiently such that you cannot simply sustain clicking Magna Opus and running every single turn. So you need to be able to access multiple cards, and the best way to do that is with the Anarch viruses, Nerve Agent, and Medium. These are fantastic. These are extremely efficient at what they do. And because they are pretty much the only viruses in my deck, they are not that vulnerable to virus purging. As in, you won't lose much tempo, even if you're virus purged. Keyhole and Hemorrhage are newer cards in the spin cycle, Anarch cards as well, that allow you to mill cards from HQ and R&D. I do not like them, because for Hemorrhage, it's because it's click intensive. As the professor, you need clicks to get money and draw cards. As for Keyhole, I've explained this before. I do not like it because I cannot install it mid-run, unlike Medium. Medium can be installed right as an R&D run is just about to be declared successful, and you gain the virus token from it. Whereas with Keyhole, you need to install it and then declare a run. And you won't know whether that run will be successful or not. In addition, Keyhole costs 2 memory units, which is a huge factor in my Magna Opus Professor deck. Finally, the Sneak Door Beta. Very important. If you see the corp icing up HQ very heavily, and you have reason to suspect that their agenda flooded, install Sneak Door Beta on one turn, run archives 3 times for free. You can always uninstall Sneak Door Beta after that. The point is you get 3 or 4 agenda points for free just like that, and yes, the game will be much easier for you from that on. It is a must include in the Professor deck, if only for that niche, for that very special situational case where it will really shine. That's the entire point of playing the Professor deck. You have a toolbox of solutions for the situation, and if you see HQ is flooded with agendas, make use of it. Use Sneak Door Beta. Alright, then there are these programs which I browsing through Onosendai. Seeing these programs make me cringe. There's no way you want to include these programs, even though they cause influence, which means the professor likes having out-of-faction programs so that he can make his full use of his ID, but these programs are so horrible that you do not want to use them. Please do yourself a favor, don't use these programs. Now moving on to economy programs. Programs that provide you an economic boost, or at least reduce your credit costs. The most significant of them all is Magna Opus. There's no question about it. The reason why it's better than KT Jones, even though KT Jones at 9 credits or more will give you more bang for your buck, i.e. more credits per click. The very power of Magna Opus is that it can be used whenever you want. It's instant money, and yes, you can, because I find most of my games, in certain turns, I want to spend all my clicks drawing up and running. In other turns, I simply want to sit back and gain 8 credits with Magna Opus. KT Jones does not allow this flexibility, and is why Magna Opus is such a strong card. Not just for the Professor, but for any deck. So, Magna Opus is a must in my deck. And because Magna Opus is so strong, I find that I do not need any other credit generating programs at all. Most of these programs are not good because they provide very few credits. Cloak only gives 1 credit. Sarara gives 2. All these are per turn. It's not really worth it. because you are constrained on MU already. Having such little drip credit, you need to keep it on the board for a long time for it to be even worth it. Parisha is useless because you have Imp already, which does the job better, especially against high trash cost items like Sansan, City Grid. And finally, Scheherazade is actually a good idea, if not for the fact that there exists a single card that counters it extremely effectively, Power Shutdown. Yes, the very existence of Power Shutdown means that you cannot play Scheherazade, unfortunately. It is way too risky to play Scheherazade only to have everything hosted on Scheherazade trash just because of a Power Shutdown. I believe the drip credit will be very good, the drip credit from Scheherazade, because you're installing lots of programs and scavenging them. However, no, it's not going to work out. Sorry. Alright, finally, I would like to talk about the remaining cards that I haven't covered, 3 of which I've chosen to include in my deck. The first is Jin. Jin is basically equivalent to Cyber Solutions membership in that it gives 2 free memory. These 2 memory, well, 3 memory technically, can only be used on non-icebreaker programs, which is fine because you host all your non-icebreakers, leaving you with 3 memory units left for all your icebreaking programs. And these 3 memory units will likely be increased by the use of Dinosaurs and Akamatsus in your deck. So it's fine. Jin allows you to play many more utility programs such as Sneak Door Beta and of course Self-Modifying Code, which is the second program I'll talk about. Self-Modifying Code is, well, there's not much to say really. It's a basic tutor that is an auto-include in most Shaper decks, so very self-explanatory. The final card I would like to talk about is Net Damage Prevention. There's no need to use Deus Ex for breaking AP subroutines because there already exists a Fairy in my deck. Fairy is meant to counter all sorts of nasty sentries, even though it's a one-trick pony, but it allows you to survive any of these nasty brain damage or program trashing ice. So, which is why Sharpshooter is not included in my deck. For Deus Ex, the reason I would include it in my deck is because it prevents net damage, which is very useful against anyone who runs a Snare or Ronin. However, Net Shield is I end up going with Net Shield as my net damage prevention program of choice, simply because it works so well against Personal Evolution. Being able to prevent all the drip damage caused by Personal Evolution's ID. And it's not a single use. It's a sustained program that stays on the board and protects all the cards in your hand. All the important cards like Test Run, Scavenge, Clone Chips, Dinosaurus. It protects all these cards from net damage trashing. And yes, I find that it is worth the deck slot, so it's going in. I guess it's the most arguable or most controversial card choice out of everything that I've included. However, I'm fine with the way I'm playing it. However, maybe if you are bringing a Professor deck to a tournament, a championship, or even a regional, and you're not expecting any Jinteki players, perhaps it's better to swap out the Net Shield. So with that said, I think I've covered almost every single program that exists in the current metagame so far. There really aren't that many viable programs to choose from when you come to think about it. A lot of them are really useless or inefficient. I mean, even as one-offs in the Professor deck, you do not want to include them. I mean, just play a few games with them and ask yourself, when will I ever want to tutor these cards to use them? Like Copycat. You will never ever want to tutor a Copycat just to get one use out of it. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, when it comes down to it, there are not that many cards left in the card pool for a Professor to choose, and those that I've picked are really commonsensical in the sense that they are the most logical programs that you would pick. Right now, I still stand by my stand that Professor decks are defined by the economy options and the way they tutor cards and the way they get their programs on the table, not by which programs they choose to include in the deck, because every Professor deck strives to maximize the number of influence they spend on programs, which means they'll more or less look the same. So yeah, I guess that's all I have. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found that this has been a very educational guide. Catch you next time.